Now around Halloween, a lot of people get really into horror media like games and films. And as a person who has a huge backlog and missed a lot of gaming during the early 2010s, I see this as a good time to finally try some horror games. But I might be scared too easily, so I think it's good to start with a horror style game. One of the games that really has intrigued me is Little Nightmares. And now when the third game just came out, I think it's time to see if the original game holds up in 2025.
Healthy young man.
I was born in the early 90s, and so my first big video game period were in the early 2000s. The big console I grew up with were PS1, Game Boy, N64 and later Game Boy Advance and GameCube. So naturally, the first games I fell in love with were platformers like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon and Mario. And for a while, the most grown-up and cinematic game I played probably were Zelda Ocarina of Time. I didn't really play any horror until Resident Evil 4 came out on GameCube. But there were two games on PlayStation that piqued my interest a lot. Oddworld and Heart of Darkness. Two games that told a dark story with cool cutscenes but minimal dialogue, which was good since I didn't know that much English at the time. But they were also something else. A hard, unforgiving gameplay that often led to sudden and gruesome deaths for the quite cute characters. When I was a teenager, I kinda got less interested in gaming, and it kept being that way until 2018, when I came back through YouTube actually. So now I'm on a gameplay journey to experience all the games I didn't back then, and I missed since. And one of those missed games that immediately got my interest was Little Nightmares. This was a game I didn't even heard about before I got a Nintendo Switch and the sequel was announced. I was instantly intrigued. It was a Tim Burton-esque horror adventure that seemed like a cinematic platformer but in 3D. I needed to try it. Little Nightmares were designed by this small Swedish studio called Tarsier. The developers described the game as a way to explore the extremes of childhood. And the setting is a boat where all the worst things in the world could be left to rot. The game were originally announced as a Hunger in 2014, but except for a little trailer, not much was heard about the game until summer 2016, where it finally got a publisher, the huge Bandai Namco. The game changed name to Little Nightmares and got released 1 year later for PS4, Xbox One and PC, and a year later for Switch. And then in 2023 it got the Android port, which is the one I'm playing. The Android version might be the worst version out there, but for me it was the most practical, since I prefer handheld and can capture it directly on my phone. I can't do that on Nintendo Switch, and they seem to run similar anyway. It works pretty great, even if I need to use it on a low graphic mode on my Xperia 10 III. It has touch controls, but I will mostly play it in my GameStar X2, and so that's the control I will talk about. The startup screen is pretty cute. It leads to this very ominous start screen. I think it's real telling what kind of game this is. Start screen is pretty straightforward. It's option, start and level select. I appreciate it. All linear story games should have a level select. We start with this creepy, mysterious cutscene. It's a close-up of a woman in a white mask. She looks at you, and then you wake up. You're this small kid in a yellow raincoat, waking up in a suitcase. And that's it. That's the entire setup of the game. After this, you just have to figure it all out. There is no dialogue or text that will tell you what you need to do. No tutorial or story background. This is a pretty effective opening compared to a long cutscene explaining the world and everything around. There is a place for that too, but in this case I think this was the right call. It helped create the right feeling. You are lost and confused, and you just need to find your way. So let's investigate the setting a bit. You're this small kid on a huge ship with small hideaways. It's claustrophobic and big at the same time. It's a weird and creepy place. I think this hanging corpse is nice detail. It's a way for the game to tell you that this is not a nice place for anyone. The ship is also full of these gnomes that are neither friend or foe. They just live there. You might be lost, but it's not hard to find your way. The game is very linear, and it has a great learning curve without handholding. The first few rooms mostly focus on helping you understand the game's controls and mechanics, as well as being familiar to the setting. The control scheme is pretty basic. You can run, slide, jump, crawl, and grab. You also have this lighter. It helps in dark places. And it lights up these lanterns who works as checkpoints. The game goes on like this for a while. You climb, run, jump, and solve puzzles. But every step you take, the game is getting harder. And your road gets more and more dangerous. First, it's harder ledges. Then this pit full of leeches. And then these eyes that turn you into stone. This is a great way to both teach you playing the game, like an Unversal tutorial, one danger at a time. But it also makes you more familiar with the boat. This is a dark place where bad things happen. Sadly, this is also where the game feels a bit clunky. You see, to survive you more or less need to find the exact part to run to be able to get away from adversaries. And sometimes it almost feels random if you time it right or not. And with the loading time of my version, this was pretty tedious. It also became clear how scripted these moments are. It's exactly the same every respawn, and that kinda ruins some of the magic. Throughout the game you get hungry. It doesn't really have a stamina system, it's just a scripted event. But if you go hungry for too long you will perish. And you can't run or jump. The first time you get a potato from this kid in a cage. Every time we eat, we get this weird and creepy blinking light and this scary music. Is this foreshadowing? Cause you see, the hunger gets stronger. The next time you're hungry, you eat this dead rat in a cage. This feels like a trap, but you're hungry, so who cares? Oh no. You wake up inside the cage. All around you there are other kids in cages. And someone take a kid in a cage. We break out of the cage. And another dark puzzle. You take this kid's cage and use it to be able to climb and use the handle. You cannot help but save the kid. And then you get up. Now this seems like a great time to talk about the mechanic that made me wanna do a video about this game from the start. The ledge grab. You see, around this time a lot of the cinematic games had button prompts for critical moments. And it just doesn't do it for me. Like just press a button and the character does all the job. Sure, I know that's how video games work, but you kinda need control scheme that somehow represent the movement or feelings of character. Partly you need to feel similar distress, but also stakes. So in Little Nightmares you press R to grab ledges. So you need to time it right, and if not, you die. It's not hard, but it helps the emotion and stress. And it's pretty satisfying to pull off. Especially if you run from a monster. Speaking of, you're out of the cage. And very casually you meet the game's first major enemy. The janitor. Or Roger according to his name tag. He's this thing with a bandaged face and tiny legs and long arms. He wants you. He wants to eat you. I really like this design. It's so weird and twisted. And especially how tortured it looks. Like Roger suffers almost as much as you. Well, almost. Roger can't see you, he can only hear you. And that's how you avoid him. Don't make a sound, don't touch him. Cause his arms are long. And this is where the game goes from creepy to horror. You see, up to this part all obstacles have been fairly one-shot. One room, one enemy. But Roger here, he won't give up. He'll chase you throughout the boat. And now you sometimes need to complete puzzles in order to survive or avoid him. This definitely turn up the tempo a notch. It's constant terror with a few breathing moments in between. The problem though is that a lot of these can lose their edge when you die a lot and need to do them again and again and again and again. It becomes clear that the game is more of a spectacle than an interactive world. But on the other hand, I'm not sure how you would do it otherwise. Because if it weren't hard sometimes, it would feel less creepy and effective. So Roger chases you across a toy room. You hide under floorboards, a clock room, and oh, he can climb walls. And this really intense library, all the while trying not to make a sound, or sometimes by doing a sound, to distract him. Pretty clever design to be honest. You get into the tunnel and Roger's arms appear. This is a great example of the trial and error. The first time you die, but then you learn. You get a final chase with Roger and oh, Oh no, that hurts. But he doesn't give up easily. You need to break his arms. And that's it for Roger, the game's most prolific enemy. Let's ride a mid hook to get higher up the boat, and we see a glimpse of our next enemy, the chef. The chef can see you, and when he does, he makes a terrifying sound. The chef can't climb, but he is faster. And I think this design is amazing. And there is something really greedy about how you see this guy cut meat, grind it. And I get a feeling we don't want to know where the meat comes from. So graphic and subtle at the same time. This part of the game has a lot more elaborate environmental puzzles to avoid the enemies, rather than just running. There are chains of events to distract them. Fun. We end with this climatic chase ending, you escaping by jumping on a meat hook. The chef is a great enemy, but nothing really gets as intense as the janitor, and I almost wish that he was the game's only enemy. We're getting close to the end now. This is a really cool set, and probably the most visually stunning of the entire game. It really highlights how small you are, like a dark Unravel game. The boat is huge, we are above ground now, and the boat is filled with these obese guests. First they're in the background, but then you need to run past them in this dining hall. While the people working on the boat look tortured, the guests can look more happy, but also kind of tortured too, like they're forced into gluttony or something. And if they see you, they eat you. You climb on plates and you jump on tables. You're a snack. This is life or death. This part is worth trial and error, but not so hard, it's bad. In the end, you are chased by a bunch of guests. They blend together like a massive gluttony. This is an amazing image, like something from a Studio Ghibli movie. We take a leap of faith and jump over the edge. Look, one of them even falls down. We're safe now, right? You're hungry again. And this whole section of the game explains why the original name was supposed to be Hunger. Luckily, there's a gnome offering you a sausage. Oh no. So, you see, I felt that this part where the game felt more and more like a horror for the sake of a horror. It's just a creepy moment and nothing more. But reading up a bit, I realized that this was all part of the hunger theme. You will consume until the hunger consumes you. Now we're at the very final section of the game. It's this freaky mansion full of those creepy mannequins and... there she is! You find a mirror and it's time for a boss fight. So you need to use the mirror to reflect the lady's attacks, almost like a Zelda boss fight. This works for stress and horror, but feels very different from the rest of the game and therefore kinda anticlimactic. Because it doesn't really belong in what this game is. The lady has lost her powers, you get close to her and you eat her. And then in a second twist you get her powers and now you go all carry on the guests. You just slaughter everything. This is very cool even if it sticks out from the rest of the game. But it's really satisfying to have power after all the running. It's like payback. Would I love to kill the chefs too. I do like that we don't get any answers, but there's also something with how the ending sticks out that makes you feel like there isn't that much to it, just horror. Guests are all dead, and now we can finally exit the mall. So that was Little Nightmares. How did it hold up in 2025? Well, to be honest, it was a pretty enjoyable experience, and a lot of times it felt really good to play. Some of the escape scenes were so enjoying to pull off, but the big thing with this game is the atmosphere, the characters and the feeling. It's obvious there's been so much love and thought put into everything, even if the ending felt a little weird tone-wise. But it's a very interesting and living world. And it's a good example of how you can tell a story and create emotions with just gameplay and visuals. But yeah, there were a few segments that are a little too clunky, and this definitely feels like a debut in the title. So I am happy that the game is short and did not overstay its welcome too much. But I wonder what more there is to the Little Nightmares universe. Let's find out. Little Nightmares was pretty much a success, especially based on how cheap it was to produce. And Bandai Namco seemed to be very happy with the game sales. So happy that they were ready to invest a lot of it. Other than the sequel release in 2021, they made merchandise, like surprisingly well-made figurines. But Bandai also made the Little Nightmares Expanded Universe. Between the release of the first and second game, we got a comic book, DLC of the base game, and even a mobile game. So let's see what's that all about. We start with the mobile game, Very Little Nightmares. Very Little Nightmares released in May 2019 to promote the second game, and it was developed by the small indie studio Alike Studios. Very Little Nightmares is something so unusual as a mobile adaptation of a conventional game that works. With mobile adaptation I mean that Very Little Nightmares feel a lot like one of those small puzzle games where you're supposed to find an exit, a tiny puzzle box game. But at the same time it has the same dreadful feel of the original, and it's actually connected to it plot-wise. So they have adapted the style, feel and gameplay of Little Nightmares to a typical mobile game. And in a way this plot almost says more about the story than the original, but we'll get there. This game has a very cute flash gaming vibe. You know those old internet games you could play in your browser? It's hand-drawn characters, but the cute style also makes the game more horrific sometimes. This chibi monster definitely will eat your chibi girl, and that's ugh. I really think the game has a lot of personality. That both resonates with the style of the main games, but with bright colors that really distance it from it. And yeah, I really like it. But the gameplay on the other hand... So the game is a clicker game, where your goal is to solve one or several puzzles to go from one room to another. Some of the puzzles are very slow and thinky, when others are about running for your life. So similar to the original, but with a slower tempo and more clicking. And where the puzzles often are quite fun, the controls aren't good. Sometimes it feels like you're just clicking all over the place until you solve the riddle. And other times you die 100 times because you need to run away from this monster, and the clicking need to be pixel perfect. It's maybe a 3-hour game, but it becomes very frustrating, very fast. So let's talk a bit more about the story and overall synopsis. In this game, you're in some kind of weird mansion. While you mostly do puzzles, you do encounter some other people here too. Some are enemies, like the big one, the craftsman, this disabled 4-armed man. But you also meet this girl with a white dress and rescue this other kid. Running away is very tedious and not at all fun. While most of the game is just puzzles and the craftsman, the end is more of a coherent story. You see this girl again and are chased by this other guy, seemingly called the butler. He has telekinesis and throws stuff at you. It's extremely frustrating, since you need to click at the exact panel at the exact time not to die. At the end you run past these falling statues and pillars, and it took way too long for me to do it, but you make it. And you get chased by this creepy thing called the Pretender, a child who seemed to want to play with you as her doll. You meet the girl again and help each other. If she doesn't die like she did for me, then well, you're toast. This final chase is very stressful, but quite effective, and we get a big twist ending. You sacrifice yourself to save the girl, who takes your raincoat, and it turns out that she was 6 and you played as someone else all along. I read somewhere about the theory that the portrait in the lady's lair is of the girl in the yellow raincoat, and that might be the daughter of the lady, and that's why she fights you at the end of Little Nightmares. But I like that we really don't know. Overall, it's a cute little game that sadly is a bit too frustrating. So let's take a break and read a book instead. The Little Nightmares comic book were released by Titan Comics in 2017 and written by John Shackelford, who haven't really done much else in credible ways. And it's drawn by Thiago Ribeiro, who has drawn a lot of stuff for Dynamite and Titan Comics, mostly tie-ins to other media like Doctor Who. Though the story credits go out to Alex Packnadel and Dan Waters, who have written a lot of stuff for Marvel and DC, as well as an Assassin's Creed book together. The comic has a pretty interesting art style. It looks a lot like an early 2000s book, like Spawn. It's not always coherent, but I kinda like it. The story doesn't add much to the overall plot. It mostly shows a group of kids sitting around a fire and pressing 6 to tell a story. She keeps quiet, but we get to hear some random stories from the other kids. Feels more like one of those promotional books you could find in a video game store from around the same time the art style originates, rather than an official tie-in comic book. But it's always nice to see a video game world be expanded on. We also get teased about this weird monster man who seems to lure the kids to the boat. So we get to learn that they are transported there from another place. Maybe we'll see that monster in another game. And there's not much more to be said about the comic book, to be honest. But it's nice to get a glimpse of the rest of the Little Nightmares world. In 2017, Bandai Namco released Secrets of the Maw, the DLC pack for Little Nightmares. And I have to confess, I think this is my first DLC ever. Sure, I have gotten some of those freeware games on mobile where you have to pay to get the whole game. Or Season Pass, like for Walking Dead. But that's more of a demo than a DLC. Compared to the other parts of the expanded universe, these DLC are made by the original developers. So the thing is, the Android version did not have DLC. So I took my last money, I bought a PC version. And of course it went on sale the day after I bought it. I have to say, the graphic difference is huge. Especially in this enhanced version. Just look at the level selection, those dioramas are so cool. And it's pretty cool to see how different the game is and looks on PC. It's not that often changes are made for ports these days, except for resolution and frame rate, so it's fun to see that the Android version actually has a lot of work done for it. The game is divided into 3 chapters, the depths, the hideaway and the residence. They all follow a new character, the runaway kid, and this is a side story to the main game. There is a lot of water in chapter 1. It starts with a nightmare of you drowning. Then we wake up in an orphanage or something. It's nice to see the world being expanded on. You start out going past places we've seen in the base game. There's the janitor again, and the cages. But this game has way more leeches. Going through we see this other girl, and it's nice to see the other kids. She ties a sheet and you climb on it. Later 6 will climb the opposite direction. You quickly descend, lever down, rather than going up like 6. In this chapter you can swim. And there is a lot of swimming. And something or someone in the water is looking for you. Oh, not the hands. Just like with the base game, the running from enemies works kinda okay. But thankfully the PC edition have faster loading times. Overall, a lot of the DLC puzzles are way more elaborate and complicated than in the main game. There the longest were a few rooms. Here the puzzles can consist of several rooms and be split up into mini puzzles. So it's definitely more of that than the action, but the depths also has running and swimming from this thing. Oh, there she is. She's called the Granny. The Granny gives me the same feeling as the janitor, a monster hunting you, and only you. You need to swing and throw stuff to get away from the Granny. And we end the chapter with a climatic puzzle boss fight. You need to swim and jump to activate this generator so you can throw the TV into the water. You need to be quick to not get eaten, but in a very satisfying way. And she's done for. Not let's run and oh no, not the hands, not the cage. Oh, you're the kid that got taken in 6 story. The second episode finds you stuck in the engine room where these gnomes. Once again, the episode shakes things up a bit, and this time we use the gnomes. You pick them up and throw them at different things, so they can help you press levers and such. Like a twisted version of Pikmin. There is definitely some complicated puzzles. The biggest is this chamber, where you need to gather all the pick gnomes you meet in the game to be able to get the elevator running. Oh, hi Roger. Yeah, the Jaren's here too. And we get this running segment session, where you need to get this electrical thing to be able to open the switch. It's a fun idea, but some of the puzzles felt maybe too complicated, or maybe I'm just too dumb, because this took me way too long time. You get the elevator running, we're at the final part of the DLC, and also my playthrough, for now. You're suddenly in the latest mansion. Oh, she's there. This whole level is one big puzzle where you need to get these statues on these platforms. You meet traps in form of ice, and later also these shadow kids that you need to attack with your lights. Here you need to aim, and the aim isn't good in this game. Way too many deaths are because of controls. Then you have the final chase from the lady. and she turns you into a gnome. Wait, does that mean that all gnomes are kids? So you play as a gnome in the final part of a level. It works good, even if I miss being able to grab things. We even get past the guests. We end with you looking at the sausage, and then it ends. So it turns out that we became the gnome that's 6'8". Scary, but kind of a lame ending. But maybe I feel that way because I rooted for the kid. Overall, it's a fun DLC pack that almost feels like a semi-sequel, and it highlights some of the game's strength. I get why people think it's better than the base game, even though I think I prefer that one myself. But it was a really fun addition. So, how does Little Nightmares hold up in 2025? Well, pretty good actually. And especially with the new enhanced edition on PC and current-gen consoles. But you should take note that the game is an in-game, which means that maybe it's not always the smoothest experience. And I am happy that these are short experiences, except for Very Little Nightmares. That one did outstay its welcome, but it's worth checking out if you're patient. I am a bit anxious about the number 2 and 3, what if they are too long or add too much? And similarly, I am a bit worried that the larger expanded media that Bandai and Namco are releasing these days will kill a lot of the mysteries surrounding this world and oversaturate the series. But we'll see someday, and after that maybe it's time for me to experience some real horror games. Maybe.